Hello, welcome to the Sticky Floor Podcast. We're at episode 10.
Yeah.
We're in double digits, motherfuckers. Also, it should be pointed out at the time of this recording, we're 10 episodes in, but only have 9 subscribers. That isn't a good sign, and I hope things change very rapidly.
Ooh.
Woo.
Christ.
Today's film... Yep. Sorry, what was that, Simon?
Christ is all
Christ.
I said.
All right. Yeah, good guy. Today's film is Romper Stomper, the 1992 Australian film, my first non-British recommendation. Although, I was going to ask this, what was it called? Witchfinder had an American production company involved. Does that count as an American film?
Not
What
really.
do you reckon? No? Yeah.
Nah.
Yeah. Okay, my first non-British effort, Australian film Romper Stomper from 1992, directed by Geoffrey Wright, starring Russell Crowe. This is sort of considered the first film that kind of established him as a leading man, in Australia anyway. Daniel Pollock and Jacqueline McKenzie. Okay, we'll go round and get people's initial thoughts. Daniel, I think I'll start with you. What did you think?
Well, just before I give my first thoughts, I guess I should just let the audience and all my fans know out there that I do have the big C. And I have told everyone before on the podcast that I do have it. And we all had a good cry. And I've told them I'm going to be all right. So now we can proceed with the podcast. But thanks for all the lovely messages. Anyway, first thoughts, stellar directing. Story let me down a wee bit. Third act, wee bit shite. Don't know. What about you, Simon?
Yeah, I agree. I really enjoyed myself. Well, enjoyed maybe not the best word to put, but I enjoyed watching the film. I thought the direction was amazing, but the third act, I do agree with Daniel, it just kind of fell apart a little bit. But there was some, it's an interesting film.
Okay, returning for not our first returning guest, unfortunately, but our second returning guest, Robert. Thanks for coming back by Popcorn Man.
Thanks for having me back.
Cool, Robert. Just to give a summation, what did you think of Romper Stomper?
I did like it. You picked a bit of a downer for my episode again, but I thought it was good. I thought the acting was really good.
Can I just note that Daniel picked Vivre sa vie? I did not pick that film.
I wasn't having a go at you, Cal. You don't need to get defensive. Don't worry. But
not defensive, just clarifying.
I thought it was good.
Good.
That's all my thoughts. I'm a valuable addition to this podcast.
Cool. Okay, so this was a very controversial film at the time of its release. The main point of consternation being that the film doesn't in fact, I should basically say what the film is about. So the film basically follows the fluctuating fortunes of a group of neo-Nazi skinheads in Melbourne. The gang is led by Handel, played by Russell Crowe, and his best pal / sort of second in command, Davey, played by the late Daniel Pollock. This group are sort of based in an area in a suburb of Melbourne known as Footscray, and they are at odds with the local Vietnamese population. Throwing that into complications, Handel starts dating is probably a bit of a stretch. He starts a relationship with a very troubled young woman called Gabrielle, who has her own issues, and basically it shows the downfall of this group of people over the course of what I'm guessing is about a week. As I said, this was a very controversial film when it came out. The main point of consternation was, as I was saying, the film doesn't take a direct moral stance when dealing with these characters. Like, it sort of just lets it do its thing. The narrative doesn't sort of say directly, "Oh, this is horrible. These are bad people." It kind of just there isn't a kind of a figure in this film that directly challenges these people, and sorry, and basically, in fact, bring it to home. We're all living in Glasgow, in and around Glasgow. This film was actually banned in Glasgow. The Glasgow City Council actually decided not to ban this film from being screened.
Wow.
And in London, at its premiere, the Anti-Nazi League, and I think it's an important distinction made, the second incarnation of that particular group protested its London premiere, which, in my opinion, was a bit knee-jerk. What did you guys think of that? The fact that this film looks at a group of highly objectionable people, but it doesn't take the sort of, I suppose, the editorial stance of the film doesn't take a very direct position. What do you make of that? Simon, let's start with you. Or would you rather not?
No, I'm just trying to get my words together, I guess. I feel like it's one of those films, if you go in with an opinion, like strong opinions, it's not going to change that. I didn't feel sympathetic for the main characters. My favourite part of the film is when the Vietnamese gang came and beat them all up. Like, there was a sense of euphoria when that happened. I feel like if you have a strong sense of, like, you know, what you believe in when you watch this film, you're not going to be like, oh, the poor neo-Nazis, you know?
Yeah.
Because the entire time I was just, like, riled up, which I feel like is, like, you're supposed to be, like, I don't know, like, even between, like, the kind of more tender moments, you can say, between the kind of, like, main trio we have, and the kind of bond, and the different bonds.
Very few as well.
Yeah. You know, like, it's needed, because you need that, like, in a film to, like, kind of humanize them in a way, but I didn't feel like it made them, like, they weren't cartoons, but they weren't, like, I didn't feel forced to sympathize with them. Do you know what I mean? I was like,
yeah,
shitty person, and it's not going to change. Like, so I enjoyed the fact that they didn't become caricatures, so they were so far removed from, like, them being actual people, which I feel like is a problem which we have, especially with, like, how we handle Nazis, because we're like, oh, they were all, like, these, you know, greater than God evil, but they were everyday people who were, like, radicalized through, you know, Hitler, and also disbarment and, like, poverty. So it's, you know, I enjoyed the fact that they weren't just, like, two-dimensional, but also I didn't feel like I was being made to feel sorry for them at any point, which I also, you know, enjoyed, because I'm not going to feel sorry for Russell Crowe in a fucking swastika. So that's, I don't know.
Would you feel sorry for Russell Crowe without a swastika?
Well, I did feel sorry for Javert and Les Mis, so I guess maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I comment on the controversy?
Yeah. Can I just, before you let you go on, Daniel, I just realised I hadn't actually given my sort of initial opinion of the film. I get what the director was trying to do, and I think it's a valiant effort, but also, my opinion of this film's changed quite a bit since I first seen it. So I saw this when I was 16, and I kind of went through a weird phase after seeing American History X for the first time, which for the better part of 10 years was my favourite film. I went through a bit of a weird phase of watching films about skinheads. So American History X, obviously, which is probably the most famous, most well-known, Made in Britain, starring Tim Roth, and This Is England, which I'd say arguably is the best film about this sort of subject matter, because it sort of, well, it shows that there's more than just one side of this. So, by the way, just to clarify the viewers at home, I, and I presume everybody else here, is aware of the fact that not all skinheads are Nazis, and not all Nazis are skinheads. Yeah, it's, I know to most people, like, skinhead is kind of synonymous with kind of far right politics, but it's not the only manifestation of this subculture. and it's not even the initial one. Anyway, yeah, I think when I saw this film, I was a bit let down by it. I was kind of let down by the fact that it felt to me almost like a kind of B movie, like just a load of stuff just happens and there isn't really much time or thought put into it. But now that I've gotten older, I kind of appreciate the fact that it's actually quite realistic in that way. Like, there's only one scene in the film where the actual politics of these characters is discussed. And as I've kind of learned more, you know, I've got older and I've kind of learned more about this, I think that's actually quite realistic, that most of the people involved in this kind of subculture, I mean, specifically the Nazi skinhead subculture, I'm not talking about skinheads as a whole, like, it's more of a kind of lifestyle, it's more of the appeal of the lifestyle than any serious ideological commitments. You know, it's a lifestyle of, it's the camaraderie, it's a lifestyle of drinking and scrapping and everything that goes along with that, rather than, you know, actually any real significant, any real political ambitions, which these characters don't have. So I kind of appreciate it for that. I think that the main problem with the film is it kind of walks a kind of very thin line between being informative and exploitative. And I think it manages to stay on the informative side, but it kind of punches that wall between those two things. And also, we don't really feel, we don't get close enough to these characters. Like, everything kind of seems to happen from a distance. I'm not just talking about visually, I'm talking about emotionally. Like, we don't get under the skin of these characters at all. And I understand the reasoning behind that, you know, like the director's intention, like, he doesn't want to moralize, he doesn't want to editorialize, he doesn't want to tell the audience what to think. He just wants to show these characters' actions and the consequences and let that speak for itself. But the way he goes about it, it's like, I don't know anything about these people. They're just there. And I don't even really see them interacting with themselves even that much. It's like there isn't actually that much dialogue in this film. There's people saying things and other people listening, but there's not actually much back and forth. So I don't actually get a sense of the kind of camaraderie between them. And yeah, like, I've kind of rambled a fair bit here, but I think it's a valiant effort, but I think just how it approaches it on a cinematic level maybe doesn't quite achieve what it was going for. Sorry, Daniel. I'll let you go on from there.
Yeah, just back to the controversy point. I think its main attraction, why people would want to see it, is also its downfall in the actual storytelling. As everyone's like, oh, I'm going to go see this Nazi film because it's, you know, shocking. However, once you get used to the fact that you're spending time with Nazis, because the main events happen the first, you know, hour or so, and then it kind of dies down when you get to go on a road trip, basically. I just kind of found myself thinking, you know, why the fuck am I watching this, you know, because I'm not interested in these people because they are skinheads, unfortunately. Well, unfortunately. And as for the people protesting, I understand why you protest something like that, but at the same time, like, art's art. You know, can you really protest a piece of art?
Well, I mean, no, I wouldn't normally. Like, I just say, like, if somebody wants to see it, they want to see it. Like,
yeah,
in my opinion, there has to be some real. See, the older I get, I don't know what would make me outwardly object to something being presented to a mass audience. Even the worst examples of art, like a film like Disaster Movie. Yeah, we're definitely watching that one in the future. But I don't know. But to get to your point about once all the, you know, once the main big events in the film happen, which is sort of, I suppose, what most people think of as the big fight in the middle, the film the pacing of the film changes quite significantly. I understand that, and that's what I felt when I saw it for the first time, is that the film is very fast to begin with. It just kind of goes to sequence to sequence to sequence. There's the attack at the start, and then there's the party, and then there's a big, massive, extended fight in the middle. And then it's just kind of like, you know what I mean, these people just floundering and just becoming just sort of, you know what I mean, shuffling their feet, and it becomes less and less and less. And so I realise that can be quite jarring, just you go from that to that. But
maybe not jarring, but just a bit lackluster.
Lackluster, that's a better word. I think the main point of this film is, in this story, is it's kind of live by the sword, die by the sword. If you carry on this way, it's just going to destroy your entire world. If you lash out at the world is going to lash back. So, and I understand the objections at some level, because I can appreciate that someone who is this way inclined, or at least sort of attracted by this kind of, how would you describe it, the ideas and the milieu of these characters, might watch this and think, you know, yeah, fucking brilliant. But for most people, there's nothing attractive about these characters. There's nothing attractive about their lifestyle. There's nothing attractive about their living conditions. There's nothing attractive about them. They're arseholes, and they live like, as Gabe says about 2/3 of the way through, they live like shit, right? And it all ends horribly for them. Oh, you're right, Simon, there. Cool. So I think the fact that the film doesn't directly say, like, there isn't a character that comes in and says, no, this is terrible, this is wrong because of X, Y, and Z. Because realistically, people like this wouldn't have someone like that in their lives. I don't think the film like drops the ball or misses a trick by taking this kind of, it's meant to be objective. Like, that's the point. It's meant to be objective. I don't think it's the most effective way of telling this kind of story objectively, but that's the point of it. It's meant to be objective. Cool. Any's got anything to add? I'm just being called away, so I'll be 2 seconds.
Rab, what's your take on the controversies?
You guys have kind of summed it all up, really. I agree with what Simon and Callum were saying, with, like, if you're the sort of person that believes in this stuff anyway, chances are a film's not necessarily going to change your mind. So if it was outwardly sort of against Nazis, which I think, I mean, it pretty much is anyway, because any right-minded person is going to think that the characters are horrible and pretty hateable. But yeah, I think if that was who you were, a movie saying this is bad maybe isn't going to change your mindset. I mean, it might for some, but for the majority of them,
even
it won't.
Let's just put an example to you guys. If there was a Nazi movie that was just basically like trying to radicalize people into becoming, you know, a Nazi, would there actually be a problem with that? Tough question.
What do you mean, like, trying to radicalize people? Because that's just propaganda, Daniel. That's not art. That's propaganda.
Taking the view...
sorry, I'm back. What's propaganda?
I was asking the question, see if you were to take a more subjective approach and one that was basically, you know, bigging up the Nazi skinheads, would then people have a right to protest?
Well...
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Definitely.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that people who protested this film didn't have the right to protest. I imagine that they probably hadn't seen the film. So I'm only speculating, but I'm guessing this was a knee-jerk reaction on their part. Anybody's got the right to protest, whether they should or whether it met the What my point is, like, I feel like you should see some, like, if it's a work of art, like, as it's a film or, you know, a computer game or whatever medium, you know, creates this kind of controversy, you should engage in it and indulge in it and form your own opinion before protesting, if you know what I mean. Like,
necessarily agree. I know, like, fucking, what's his name? Like, not Andy Samberg, what's his face?
What's he in?
Andy Kaufman? No. You know,
point still stands.
Andy
Sander.
The man,
But
the
Adam
Sandler.
Sandler. I fucking know I'm not going to enjoy an Adam Sandler movie because it's shit. Like, so you don't need to sit down and watch something
Someone's got
to,
shit
like,
taste.
Yeah, but that's the thing.
to critique it.
You've watched enough Adam Sandler's to have that expectation. That's the point. You know what
And I
Adam.
feel-
But it's not right.
You know Adam Sandler's milieu already to have that expectation that Happy
The same
Madison is
goes
not
for
putting
if
out
you-
a stellar comedy experience.
The same goes if,
Yes,
You
it
haven't
is.
seen Hubie Halloween, Callum, all right? Shut
for
your mouth.
fuck's sake,
Quality
Yes,
cinema.
I will stand corrected if that is the case.
Big Daddy is a good film.
fuck's
I've
sake.
enjoyed.
I love that one.
Adam Sandler has made some good films. I'm not going to say.
Punch Drunk
I've
Love.
not seen
The
Punch
point
Drunk Love.
is not Adam Sandler. The point I'm trying to make is
We're off topic.
Yeah,
the point is
you two
if
mute.
you know that I'm not saying I'm morally against Adam Sandler, it was a bad example, but if you know something is not of your liking and it's not in this case
How
comedy
would you know?
but more political, well, if it's a film promoting Nazis, I'd say that wasn't necessarily my cup of tea. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah, that was
Like,
the problem.
I don't think people have to see something to critique it if they know enough about it. You can't just critique something if you know nothing about it. But if there's enough research done and, like, you know, background knowledge, I'm pretty sure people can go and be like, this I'm uncomfortable with and I think shouldn't have been made without having to watch it.
Well, the problem is sorry, Robert, I'll make this quick point. The problem is the people who did protest this thought this was the stance they took, that this was promoting Nazism or racism. And the thing is, this film isn't. I think all four of us can say that this film isn't. This is showing it at its most ugliest and self-destructive, like by showing a bunch of highly dysfunctional and, you know, characters who it's obvious it's all going to end horribly for them. Like, this is the obvious trajectory for a lifestyle like this. I'm sorry, Robert. What were you going to say?
I mean, it's a bit of like a non-point anyway. I'm going back to the controversy thing. Like, the whole point of making art and making films and stuff, it's supposed to be critiqued and spoke about and start a conversation. So, like, that means this film, first off, is kind of doing its job anyway. And yeah, like, even if a film was outwardly promoting views that we would all despise, like, we can still be perfectly capable of criticizing that film and criticizing its points. But yeah, it was just sort of summing up what other people said, to be honest, at the end. But
yeah, I think you make a good point. I was just really playing devil's advocate. I don't actually think that about Nazi propaganda films. But one thing I would say is that
I mean, here's the thing. I just think that things should speak for themselves, even if they are, like, you know what I mean? I don't think, like, for instance, that every copy of Mein Kampf should be destroyed because it's historical. In the case of Mein Kampf, it's historically significant. And yes, I realise somebody might read it and be influenced by it and think, oh, this is brilliant, this is right, this is bang on. But I realise that as culture has developed and as this kind of stuff has become so unattractive, that those people are almost always going to be within the fringe. So there is enough, like, protections in society and culture's developed to a point that stuff is always going to be marginal. Not always, obviously. There could be a huge cataclysm and, you know what I mean, we could see a rise in these kind of ideas in the far, far future. But for the time being, like, these ideas are going to be marginal. So
yeah, well, that's the problem, isn't it? It's the fear that they won't be marginal, and that's why people get, you know, so uptight with this kind of stuff. But that's not the movie and the filmmaker's problem.
I realize, but I realize that, but that's the whole thing. Like, this is often the point that was made every time. When I was young, and any time there was a school shooting in America, there would always be some, mostly but not exclusively, sort of conservative-leaning pundit honing in on, you know, what computer games were they playing, what music were they listening to, you know, what movies were they seeing when
Adam Sandler
Mike-
ones.
Well, I wouldn't. To be honest, if it was that, I wouldn't blame him. That was said in jest and irony. I don't. The Sticky Fork podcast does not advocate mass murder. Yeah, like my whole takeaway from this is, if somebody watches a violent film, plays a violent computer game, or listens to, I don't know, Marilyn Manson, he usually got pulled up for these types of things back in the day, and then goes and murders someone or murders several people, they were probably going to kill people anyway.
Yeah.
Like, I really
I agree
don't
with
think
that, definitely, especially on the video games thing. Like, well, surely playing a violent video game is that's obviously different to reading Mein Kampf, where it's actually promoting those views.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's read Mein Kampf, just out of interest.
Can't say I have.
No,
Yeah, just before bed, mate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same story.
Yeah. I found it rather tedious. No, I'm kidding on, I haven't actually read it either.
Nah,
I've heard the extracts of it, but I've never actually read it in its entirety. So, Robert, what did you think? What did you think of the? So we've gone over, like, you know, the controversy surrounding whether it merited, but what did you think of the film just as a cinematic experience, other than it being good?
Yeah, it's an interesting watch. We've spoken a lot about what we think the film was trying to say and how it doesn't endorse Nazis, but also doesn't actually say that they're bad. But I think through what happens to them...
Well, he doesn't say that they're bad, but he kind of does, but not in an overt way.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Through what happens to them, like, you can tell it's painting a bad picture. If you're a bit messed up in the head, you might miss that, or you might just think that it looks sick anyway. But it doesn't...
That's sick in a good way.
But you might... I forgot what I was going to say now. Totally blanked. But yeah, these people are all incredibly, like, sad people. They're all at least Gabrielle, she's incredibly damaged.
What do you think of her conversion?
So,
I've heard
was
what?
that Daniel?
With, like, her being converted into a Nazi. What did you?
I never thought she got converted. I think she just went along with it because this was just another group of people to attach herself to, because you know, she was that type of person who just, you know, just wanted attention and affection wherever she could find it. But we're kind of jumping ahead of ourselves. So
I think a big part of the film is community. Like, it's a horrible community to be a part of. That's what the actress who played... I was watching an interview of her about the film. She was saying...
Yeah, Jacqueline McKenzie.
She just wanted to be... like, to belong. And she belonged in the worst place possible. But I do think... I wouldn't say she turns into an Nazi, but she does, like... She certainly takes on some of the views, I think. Like, there's one part where she's, like, reveling in beating up the Vietnamese people. She's a shitty person herself.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is the thing. And Daniel, I was going to throw this in your face in reference to our Riot Club review. I remember you saying that, what's the point in watching a film when you don't like any of the characters? Well, I would put it to you that the people in this film are objectively worse than the people in Riot Club. Yet you thought that you thought this was a better film.
Yeah.
And yes, I would say that posh Tory boys, even though they have more power and probably could do more damage in the long run in a more subtle way, they still don't pose the immediate. They still don't cause the kind of immediate material harm that Nazi skinheads would.
Well, I think that
in their immediacy, if you know what I mean.
The reason I don't like Riot Club is because I think it lacks a poignancy and any real, like, truth to it that is...
Can you just clarify what the word poignancy means?
Something that's poignant, mate.
I don't know what that means. I know the word, I don't actually know what that word means.
I'm gonna Google it just because I
Simon,
got it wrong.
you're the brainy one.
Fucking no.
Well, it basically means a quality of evoking a keen sense of sadness or regret.
Okay, all right. So it lacks sadness or regret.
Yeah, I actually thought it meant something totally different. I thought poignancy meant it
Yeah,
lacked a point,
same.
basically. But
All
anyway,
right, okay.
I feel that this doesn't try to make a statement within itself. The statement is the actual just film, if that makes sense. I don't know if it does.
Yeah,
As in,
I understand what you mean. Like it
the
just
fact it exists.
it speaks for itself, so it doesn't have to hammer this point into you.
Whereas the Riot Club, I feel, does.
Okay. But then can you appreciate the fact that you can actually have a film that can make a point potentially well. I'm not saying this film makes the point as well as it potentially could have, but it shows a group of characters who are unlikable, but you can kind of, but it makes a point with that. It's not.
Well, the Wolf of Wall Street is a prime example of a great film that does that.
But doesn't the Wolf? I've not actually seen the Wolf of Wall Street, but isn't there sort of? Can't you kind of get along with the fun of the characters and appreciate why they do what they do?
You can't appreciate it, but they're very dislikable. But it's a fun journey.
Yeah, I mean, here's a thing that potentially, and this is even more contemporary reviews. I actually listened to a podcast review of this, which recently, just in preparation for this, which was a bad idea because it potentially colours my opinion. But they said that the kind of cinematic techniques that this film employs, like the fight scenes, and I mean, there's only technical, well, no, actually, no, there is more than one fight scene, but like the main spectacle fight scene sort of plays out like an action film scene. I mean, obviously, it's filmed in a different way than an action film normally would do it, but it has all that qualities. It's the main characters fighting loads of faceless enemies. So
Punk rock in the background.
Yeah. Oh, that's the thing I want. Well, here's the thing. This film is very unique in how it uses music and sound design. Now, the sound design is the thing I was a bit iffy on. It tries to be a bit more surrealistic with and artistic with its sound design. And
I
sort
liked
of
that.
like the fact that
That
they
was
use
like
kind of
my
like
least favorite part of the film.
Yeah, like the bass.
I like the animalistic noises. I'm not
in the
saying
fight
it was
scene
done
that worked,
great,
but the things
but
like
I
sorry, I'm talking
I enjoyed
over you.
the effort nonetheless. I enjoyed what they were trying to do. It was
Yeah.
I get what they're trying to do, but I just thought the rest of the film is so like painfully realistic. Like we were saying earlier, it's a realistic plot. It's shot. There's no like fancy shots. It's shot well, but it's not like surreal at all. Aside from the sound effects, so it really like there's at one point where he's strangling
Gabe.
I'm jumping to the end. He's strangling Gabe. And I swear he like roars like a bear, and it just took me out of the film so much.
I think that worked well, and I think using the kind of animal noises during the fight scenes, because the point is these people are like wild animals, and
I got that. It just took me out of it.
I think the kind of scenes like
the point was
the
made
more abstract bits, like even in the opening scene where you hear a baby crying when they attack those Vietnamese teenagers in the underpass. Like, I just felt like I get what they were trying to do. It's like a trying to sort of, what's the word?
Tribalize it? Is that a word? Tribalize?
Well, no. I was thinking it was more kind of being like, well, I suppose it's like a kind of punk rock thing. It's all discordant and disorientating. And I see what it was trying to do there, but I think it just seemed a bit hammy. Like maybe that's just a kind of cinematic technique that hasn't aged so well.
Mean Girls stole it.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, yeah, they did use that. But like I said, the animal noises during the violence worked, but maybe some of the other stuff not so much, and that's just my opinion.
As well.
The music is an interesting thing. So we'll go into the soundtrack. We'll leave the soundtrack to one side, even though that's the most notable bit. The score itself, just like the actual music. What did you think of that? Like, so the opening theme and the closing theme are similar but different. So I often found the opening theme a bit, when I first heard it, I thought it was a bit too melodramatic for the subject matter. Like this is and this is a problem maybe I had with the film. It tries to mix the gritty and the surreal, and it doesn't quite work, if you know what I mean.
I think it saves itself a little bit by only really having its surrealistic stuff in its like sound and music, and everything else is quite real. But I'd agree with you. I didn't love the music. See the actually, if you want to talk about the theme first. Go
the
for it.
the main theme. I thought it sounded a bit too realistic, but then when they kind of I like that bit, and I liked how they reprised that at the very end, at the closing credits, and it's the actual tune's called "The Dead Nazi March," and I thought that was kind of effective.
Oh,
Like, and
what
also
about?
jumping
Yeah, you
ahead
go
a
on.
bit, the final shot of the film of the credits being Hando's dying vision of a kind of side-on looking at the tide. What did you make of that? Did you think that was too gimmicky, or did you think that was a
I
nice
liked
touch?
that.
I thought it
It
was
was, it
alright.
was, yeah, it was a small moment. It didn't last too long. It wasn't like trying to be too fancy. So yeah, it was fine.
It was right at the end of the film as well.
Yeah.
I thought it worked quite well.
Yeah. Now, to talk about the actual music, and to be honest, this music is the actual score, the soundtrack, and this is only used in the first half of the film. Well, actually, no, technically, there's one song that reprises twice in the second half. So they actually used a session band. So a session band or a studio band is where they just hire, it's just musicians for hire, and they came up and they recorded these Nazi skinhead songs specifically, and this is often misattributed to the band Screwdriver, but it's not Screwdriver. They didn't get an actual Nazi skinhead band to make these songs, although there's an urban myth out there that they approached a band who rebuffed them when they found out this wasn't going to be a sympathetic depiction of their movement. I don't know. I couldn't say too much to that, so I'm not going to.
Let's hope that's just an urban myth then.
Yeah, but here's the thing: this film is wholly unique in that it uses racist music, even though it's racist music that was composed specifically for this film, and it's by non-racists as part of the soundtrack to highlight the music. What do you think of that?
I guess it's better than paying actual racist musicians, but it's definitely an interesting choice. I think it's kind of integral to the kind of story in a way because, you know,
this is the music that these
Skinhead,
characters would listen to.
yeah, Skinhead in that sense is co-opted from the kind of skinhead ska punk movement. So music is so integral to it, and you know, without it, it's, you know, it's a genre. So it is kind of integral, but it's still like, you know,
It's
it's
probably the
definitely a
best
unique
way.
situation. Yeah.
It's probably the best way they could have handled it without just not having Nazi songs, which was another option, I guess. But
yeah, and just having generic punk music in the background.
yeah, but it does.
But
like
that
it
also could have
disgusts you
crossed
listening
signals.
to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it
to be
makes you
honest,
uncomfortable listening to it. So.
It made
here's
me
the thing.
uncomfortable.
Here's the thing. Now, I've listened to bands like Screwdriver, not like just just out of morbid in the past, out of morbid curiosity, and also I've listened to regular Oi. Oi is the kind of the subgenre of punk that skinheads listen to. Bit of a ham-fisted way of putting that across, but that's the point. I think that here's the thing, right? I think that for a group of people who, as far as I know, and there's quite an interesting article about this on Noisy, the music component of Vice, about this, where they interviewed the people involved. I think for people who, one, did not listen to this music at all, weren't even really that well kind of tuned with punk music, to kind of do their research and come out with stuff that sounds very much like this genre of music, to the point that actual Nazi skinhead bands have covered these songs. I kind of think, yeah, art imitating life. I mean, it's not like exactly. It's not like they're going to have a big audience, so I'm not really that bothered about it, right?
I mean, I guess.
I think it's kind of like, yeah, I think people who weren't a part of this to make music that was like this and do it kind of accurately is quite a good effort. On the other hand, like, is there a problem with the fact that they made racist music, even if it's technically fictional racist music, as a soundtrack of their film about racists? And
it's a grey area, isn't it?
But here's the thing. Even so, there's 4 songs. So the first one, so there's like the Smack song, which is the first one. Then there's the Party song, which is the most. Sorry, I didn't mean to give a middle finger there. Which is called "Pulling on the Boots," which is probably the most well-known song out of this. It's been covered the most. By the way, what did you think of the way that party scene was filmed? like the kind of franticness of it, like the editing and as well as intercut with Russell Crowe and Jacqueline McKenzie in a very graphic and rough sex scene. What did you make of that? What did you make of that whole sequence? Daniel,
But
you've
it
not said
suited the
anything for
film.
quite some... Yes, Daniel, you've not said anything quite this time. Say something.
What would you say, Simon?
I just said I think it suited the film.
Yeah, me too. I think it worked well.
Yeah. I'm...
Gives you a good
who's-
idea of their lifestyle. I thought, like, you can tell they do that a lot.
Have sex?
What?
Party, and yeah, probably.
Oh, right.
Party
Okay.
and jump about. Like, this and the fight scene, like, because I've seen this film quite a few times, although watching it for this review, it was the first time I'd seen it in a few years. There's quite a lot of continuity errors within this scene and the fight scene, like characters in one shot being in one place, then being in another place in the next shot.
I give
that
that a
kind of-
pass.
Yeah, I gave that a pass. I would give
It's
that
so
a pass.
frantic that you can't really.
Yeah,
tell
I
it.
didn't
It just
notice that.
adds. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, again, if you're not somebody who's seen this film as often as I've seen it, like that, yeah, that's fair enough.
Well,
Um,
also they shot it in 28 days, which is kind of insane considering how elaborate that big fight scene with the Asian people are.
The Vietnamese.
Vietnamese.
Yeah. Mm. Oh, here's an interesting thing, right? So there's only really one scene. I know I already kind of went over this, that I think there's only one scene in this film where the actual politics of these characters is discussed. Where it's a scene where Russell Crowe, Dave asks him why he's got all this stuff, and he goes on about how, you know, basically the Vietnamese are moving over here and taking over everything, buying up businesses, changing the area, that kind of thing. And in the next scene, and it's alluded to a bit earlier in the film, a Vietnamese restaurant owner is buying their local pub. Now, the review I listened to on the podcast I listened to said this is where the director dropped the ball because it had the main character expressing his ideas and then something kind of justifying that in a following scene. What do you think of that? Did he drop the ball there? Because in my opinion, he's talking about what is a real phenomenon. Yes, people moving in, buying up businesses, this is happening. But the thing is, his response to that is obviously not the right response, however he may feel about it. So I don't think he dropped the ball. Like, I don't know. How do you guys feel?
It was one of like my initial problems was when I started thinking about it. I was like, they did sort of justify his thoughts, but also like, then I kind of stopped myself and I thought there's nothing, like any normal person wouldn't have an issue with it. It's only him that would have an issue with it because it's not a bad thing. So he shouldn't, like, it doesn't even justify his thoughts because it's a stupid thought to have as it is.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Have I said
Yeah,
that
I
well?
get what you're saying. I mean, I can appreciate the fact that, you know, the demographics and the culture or whatever of a place where someone might live changing quite significantly over a short space of time might be very jarring, and it might, you know, elicit a kind of fear and also potential prejudices that go along with that. But I don't
Is he
think that
justifying it?
is who justifying it.
You used the word justify, did you not? About like that's where he dropped the ball is by trying to justify the Nazis' action.
Well, that's not my opinion. Like,
No, I'm
obviously,
just asking you.
and that's not what they were saying, that he did this deliberately. They're saying he dropped the ball and that the character expressed his opinion, and then in the following scene, there was an example of that opinion. And my old take from it is, yes, that might be the case. And apparently in the district of Footscray, which is set that in the last kind of 10 years, a lot of Vietnamese people had moved into that area. So yeah, I can imagine there would have been some people who felt that way. It's just what happens, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't make it
totally
right,
agree.
but it's just what happens. But like, my whole point is, and also here's the thing, I know I said that there's nobody in the area that challenges their idea. There's nobody in the film that challenges their ideas, and there isn't really. But the kind of landlord of the pub. So in the early part of the scene, you know, where they allude to the buying of the pub, where they quizzed the landlord over the fact that he had some Vietnamese in, and he says, you know, and they're like, "Oh, this is our place," and he goes, "No, this is my fucking place." And they said, "Yeah, but you had in here, and he goes, doesn't bother me. You got a problem with that? That's your fucking problem. Like, that is a character who's not taking a political stance, but just saying like, yeah, that's you. You know what I mean? So it kind of shows that there are people in this world. Not everybody is like this. Like, they don't get free reign. So I feel like, I don't know. Like, I've talked for ages. Sima, say something, please. If I dug a hole, dig me out.
I don't really have anything to add, really.
I do.
Yeah.
If, you don't.
Right, Daniel, you go.
So what you guys were talking about earlier, just in terms of him dropping the ball, is he not justified in like this showing the root cause or one of the root causes of why Nazis are so angry, especially in
Here's the thing,
Australia?
I don't think you have to be a Nazi to have, well, obviously you have to be a Nazi to follow the philosophies and, you know,
Well, you have to be
Adolf Hitler. But I mean,
you have to be racist.
Yeah, like, I mean, with, you know, we're opening up a much wider discussion, but like the whole point is like, so this is, Footscray's changed quite a bit. It's now quite a trendy area, like it's quite gentrified now, but it was traditionally like a very working class area. And it's also seen many waves of immigration from Europe and more latterly from Vietnam, as shown in the film. Like, I suppose the kind of point is, and this is an attitude, and we see examples of this over years of votes with different immigrant groups, like people who are maybe not, people who are struggling, people who are not doing so well, will see newly or relatively recently arrived immigrants generating wealth and resentment building from that. And that can, you know, that can manifest and play out in its various ugly ways that we've seen. I mean, yeah, it's the same old story. Like, you know what I mean? So the point is that how these characters respond to that is, one, it's the wrong way to go about it, because you can't treat people this way just because they or their parents are from another place. But also, if you, this is the way you approach, like, again, it's like I said, if you strike out the world, eventually the world's going to strike back and it's going to destroy everything around you.
Yeah, what I think it was Simon said earlier about portraying the Nazis maybe not as just these evil beings that are kind of inhumane. Would you? I mean, I think that scene kind of shows, maybe not well, but it does at least show one of the root problems, along with, you know, the slum that they're living in. Yeah,
that's interesting. Oh, by the way, we're kind of going. I wanted to talk about the character of. Well, I wanted to talk about the three main characters. I think the main problem with the film is, like, say a film like, it doesn't, I think the problem with the film is we don't learn enough about these characters. And to be honest, the character who's an outsider, Gabe, is the only character we actually learn most about. And she's not even a Nazi skinhead. Like,
I think, sorry, Robert, do you want to?
I didn't have much to say, but I think because the film's focused on him so much, you can kind of get a sense of who Hando is. Like, we don't really need to know his backstory, but I definitely think that about, like, Davy. I just feel like we barely know him at all. I struggled to work out who he was, what his morals were, like.
Who, Davy?
Yeah.
All right, this is what I was going to bring. Now, I'm going to just, this is going to be a very quick thing. Robert, I had this question for you. Is Davy what one might call a simp? I don't want to drag this conversation down to that level, but but as rewatching this,
why me? Why is that my expertise?
You're the youngest.
By like a year, like a couple months. Okay, in all honesty, I mainly blame the internet for me having this thought. At one point in the film, I did think Davy's a bit of a simp, isn't he? But, like, I don't know. It's not his worst quality, is it?
I think
also, actually, you know what? He's not that bad.
No, it's not his worst quality.
He's not that bad because he doesn't... Oh, I can't believe I'm talking about fucking simps. About... It's not that bad because if he...
Yeah, I get it. Being a simp is not as bad as being a violent neo-Nazi.
No, I'm more... Well, I mean, obviously, but like, he to be fair to him, he doesn't like actively go after her too much when she's with Hando. She more goes after him, which kind of justifies him going after her. So he's not just chasing something that isn't there.
He did run into a burning building to get the jacket that they stole the day before.
That was when I thought he was a simp, actually. So
that is. I think to be honest, I think it more just comes down to the fact that I feel like all these characters are a wee bit underdeveloped. So if they had,
it would have been a lot better to actually get a better sense of why Davey liked Gabe. I don't know.
I don't know. It just came across as he fancies his pal's girlfriend, who isn't really his girlfriend. It's just the guy he pulled the day before. And
yeah, I'd agree with that.
I do want to say, I think there is a reason, going back to Gabe, I think there's a reason why she's the most developed in the cast. Like, I don't think that's by accident at all. She is the outsider, therefore, yes, the kind of main group we're dealing with could have definitely been better developed, but when you're working with that kind of material, you have to make sure like the person on the outside is like, even if you don't relate to her, you can see her in like actual people you know. Whereas when dealing with like a topic like neo-Nazis and like racist skinheads, it's like, I feel like you walk that line between like creating a fully like dimensional character and like sympathizing with them. And I think it was kind of, that was the fact we didn't get development is kind of more from a fear of making them too sympathetic, which is why Gabe was so more developed than the rest of them, so we could like have like an anchor out of the group, even if she was like not innocent at all, because she was a bystander to their crimes. But she's presented in such a way that seems like she's not as bad. I'd argue she is quite fucking far gone.
She's damaged.
I think you put that pretty
damage
well.
does not fucking
cover it.
Yeah, it doesn't begin to cover it.
The fact that she's happy to jump around with a bunch of fucking bald-headed racists. Frankly.
Well, to be honest, you see with the whole politics front, I think she, you know, I mean, it's not something she knows much about. She doesn't know much about Hitler or Nazism or all that. She just like,
which is baffling, frankly. It's fucking
not really.
Hitler.
Most people aren't that. Most people, your odd punter isn't intellectually curious or that well informed.
I'm not saying intellectually curious, but like, I feel
Hitler's a bit of a
World
bad
War
dude,
II. World War II is like forced down our throats in terms of like historical education. I feel like if there's any like fascist dictator you're gonna know, it's gonna be my boy Adolf. You know, like.
Well, when your father's a sexual abuser, I mean, are you really going to be that educated, or are you going to be a bit like damaged in terms of you don't really?
Here's the thing.
Yeah,
they do mention she went from like school to school at one point.
Yeah, school to school, but.
Yeah, maybe she's not the best education.
I'm sorry. I just can't believe someone doesn't fucking know, like, even just the smallest thing
it's
about
nothing,
the Nazis.
It doesn't that she knows who Hitler is. It's just that, whoa, they're into this stuff. Okay, I don't really know much about this, and to be honest, I fancy this guy, and this is only all over the course of. You see, if you fancy someone, and you. Yeah, but here's the thing, right? You put up. You see, if you want affection, especially for somebody like this who craves affection, you put up with a lot, especially on initial meetings.
Yeah, and I get what they're saying. That's like there's a pattern of abuse because she was abused as a child. She's more willing to put up with abuse from the group and from Hando, and I understand what they're doing with that. But it's just. It's just one of those tiny little things that irks me. That's all. But I respect what they're trying to do.
Just responding to your point about the characters. See if that irks you. I kind of understand why, but I do think that Hando as a character was quite. I don't want to use the word realistic, but I guess I have to use that because I kind of think a better word. But the fact that I think everyone knows someone that kind of comes across as this, you know, kind of not dad, but he's definitely
leader of the pack.
Yeah,
alpha male.
Is intent on always being correct, and it's his way or no way. I mean, everyone kind of knows a guy like that, and I thought it was really smart to partner those two characters together.
Simon, I think you and me kind of both hold that position in our group.
Yes, I'm such a father figure to you all.
Yeah.
Yeah, you remind me of Hando a lot, Callum. Don't worry.
Yeah.
That's a joke. That's a joke. You're not a Nazi. Don't worry.
Yeah. No, it's my facial hair. By the way, I years ago I showed. I know this is going to sound stupid, but I showed this to my mum. She said that Russell Crowe looks too pretty, but too clean and pretty beside them all. What do you think of that?
Nah.
I do agree, he is too attractive. And I'm not even attracted to Russell Crowe.
No,
Like,
I can't imagine you and him would have
Uh-uh.
much to get on very well.
but he looks
I
too
mean-
good. Do you know what I mean?
look,
Like when
You can be
Like,
rough and
yeah,
handsome.
actor.
yeah, no,
Yeah,
but
you could be a handsome.
no, but like
be a piece of shit.
Davey is like a prime example of that. He is rough and handsome.
You see,
Russell
okay,
Crowe is he just doesn't look
The
quite
I don't
actor-
think he
right.
looks like
You know.
beaten up enough.
yeah.
Yeah.
The actor who played Davy actually died before the film came out. Daniel Pollock, he was kind of struggling with heroin addiction at the time, and he before the film was released, he threw himself in front of a train. Fortunately, and he was only 23 at the time, which is very
Jesus
sad.
Christ.
Yeah, it's pretty horrible.
Yeah. Also, interestingly, apparently him and Jacqueline McKenzie, who played Gabe, were actually going out whilst the film was being made, and allegedly in their sex scene, they were actually having sex for real.
Do you know I actually thought that?
You know, I'd forgotten how graphic. I mean, obviously, I knew about the one before during the party scene because I'd seen that much more often, but just from clips and that. But yeah, I actually watching back and I thought, you know what? I forgot how graphic this sex scene was. And
Are you sure? Because like I was watching the Jacqueline McKenzie interview, and she was saying that one sex scene with Davey was actually, which I didn't really get a sense of. Apparently, it was really planned out. Like the director, is it Geoffrey Wright? Is that his name?
Yeah, Geoffrey Wright.
So he was like, "Oh, I want you to lie down here, then roll over there, then get up and do it there, and then roll over, whatever." He probably gave better direction than that, but that it was choreographed. But
maybe you're right.
She was telling the story of how they messed up and apparently fell off the bed, which is like a funny story they had. So surely they wouldn't have actually like shagged for real if they had.
When I watched it, I thought they were.
It's happened before. There's like a few there's a few well-known cases of unsimulated sex scenes in films. Mostly.
You got any examples?
Allegedly, in the Bernardo Bertolucci film 1900, I think there's apparently an unsimulated sex scene, which I've seen that film, and the most graphic one I can remember is one with Robert De Niro and whatever actress he was with in that scene. So apparently they shagged for real, but don't quote me on that.
Cool. I won't.
There was a point I was going to make about something. So the character of, what did you think of the acting just in general? I didn't think it was brilliant, to be honest. I didn't think it was bad, but I just didn't think there was no core blimey. Oh my God, that's amazing points.
I thought Russell Crowe was really good. I said I was a fan of the acting at the start. I was mainly talking about Russell Crowe.
Yeah.
Gabe was all right. I'm pretty sure he won awards for it. Maybe because he died, but I didn't think the guy playing Davey was that great. But that's also because he didn't have a lot. Daniel Pollock, but he didn't have a lot to really work with. He just kind of had to look. All he got to do was just sort of look at Gabrielle and
be a bit reserved and a bit.
Yeah.
I think
I don't think that's
fair
on
enough.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess that is more a problem with the character and all the characters, because Russell Crowe is the only one that I was kind of impressed with.
The actor who played Sonny was the one out of the, you know how like the group, obviously half in size after half of them get a doing, out of the group that still remains Sonny, the one with the denim jacket, who's kind of the gobby one of the group. I quite enjoyed his... What?
The wee one?
No, that was Bob's, the older one. The one who says, which a very cool line, even though it's obviously where he goes with it, the bit with the home invasion where he goes, We came to wreck everything and ruin your life. God sent us. I used to think that was a really cool line. Like, what do you make of that bit?
It was a bit Dead Poets Society.
Yeah.
Like, kind of like
Very
kinda,
good point.
That's basically my thoughts on that. Some of the
It's
dialogue, I was a bit like,
it's a good soundbite, but then for a film that, here's the thing, I feel like they were trying to go for from what I get from the interviews with the director, like they were going for a kind of kitchen sink realism, cinema verite thing, but I don't think they achieved that very well, just because like it tried too hard. You know what I mean? It tried too hard with its kind of semi-action and semi-arty bits, and it didn't quite know how to balance that. But I enjoyed his performance. Like I quite like. He's kind of, I suppose you'd say, he's the funny one. Like he hits himself with his own weapon, and the bit where they're running down the alleys and they turn a corner and there's some Vietnamese coming up the opposite direction and he does an about time and goes, ah! I thought that was funny. The character of Bubs, which was the young one. Okay, can I first of all...
Gavroche of the cast.
The what?
The Gavroche of the cast. The kind of... Oh, never mind.
I didn't land. That reference doesn't land. Explain.
Is that a theatre reference?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's Gavroche?
It doesn't matter. Carry on.
Anyway, here's the thing. The problem is, like, he has his tender moment with Handel just before his character dies. I felt like that was too little, too late, because just like all the rest of him, he's horrible and violent, and you know what I mean. He doesn't actually contribute anything to the story. He's just there.
Is this the one that says we were sent by God? You're talking about?
No. This is Bob's, the young one, like the one.
Oh
who
right,
was
yeah.
That actor was about 60.
Like a 12-year-old.
Yeah, that's the thing. He was actually about 16 at the time. Yeah, like there was that very brief bit towards the end of the party scene where he's seen having sex with one of the women, which really disturbed me when I was young. I thought, fucking hell. But then I realised, okay, that actor is over the legal age. Yeah. I felt that was a wee bit, I mean, it's not like I can't imagine an environment where somebody very young might have sex with an adult in that environment. I'm not saying that couldn't happen.
Have you seen Mid-90s?
Mid-90s. Oh yeah, that's actually
fucked.
And here's the thing: you see the actress who played her as well. She's the same age as me.
Fuck.
I know. Damn. She looks very good for her age. I'll give her that. Yeah, character of Bubs. I always disliked the character of Bubs, partly because he resembled somebody at school I didn't get on with. Although since checking that, since having a look at that guy,
he's a Nazi is the worst thing about him.
Yeah.
No, but here's the thing. Like, I get they were trying to do. Do you think it was exploitative having that whole bit where he gets killed? Because obviously he's a child and he gets shot, and that's very dramatic. Do you think that was exploitative, or because my whole take from it was, it is shocking, but at the same time, this character has not been.
The kid.
Why?
Shoot the kid.
Yeah, I didn't care.
At that, yeah.
I mean,
at that point, I was like,
what resembles an active gun at the police, you are probably going to die. Like, that was a bad idea.
I couldn't tell if that was meant to be like
neo-Nazi.
I couldn't tell if that was meant to be like against the police. If that was meant to be like a criticism of them.
No,
then
I mean,
if he is holding like it looks exactly like a gun. There's no question about it.
Yeah, it is a gun, a deactivated one, admittedly, but it looks like if you point, that's the thing. It's just it's supposed to be young. He's the youngest, and it's youthful recklessness.
I did feel a little bit of like maybe he was just indoctrinated because he's a kid, and it's a shame that he died because he's a kid. But
here's the thing:
I don't think thing took away from that a bit.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Here's the thing, right? Like, these characters, in terms of I don't find these apart from Handel, these characters aren't that political. I feel like for them, it's more the lifestyle and the camaraderie and the sense of belonging that draws them to this. You know what I mean? They're essentially just BAMs.
Do you not think, like you were
like
saying
a young
earlier,
team?
You were saying earlier that like they don't talk about politics too much, and you thought that was good because they, in real life, they probably wouldn't that much. They would just talk like their mates. Do you think that's why, though? I got the sense that they were political. It's just not something they were talking about.
Yeah.
I don't
'Cause
think they
they
were probably
still-
that politically literate.
Oh yeah, obviously not. But I think they had their extreme views, and
Yeah.
you got that from the film.
I think the neo-Nazism, with the case of characters like this, it's more an attitude than more a really ingrained ideological commitment, if you know what I mean. Like, from what I understand and kind of research I've done in this, like with kind of far-right groups, I should say, with like serious political sort of ambitions and skinheads, it's always been a kind of love-hate thing, in that, you know, I mean, they've seen them obviously in English-speaking countries anyway. Nazi skinheads aren't much of a phenomenon anymore. You see the odd one, but they're mostly they're mostly middle-aged guys now. Like they kind of appreciate them for, like, you know what I mean, they're useful as security or maybe for a fight when they're fighting with their enemies. But if they've got actual serious political ambitions, they've got to contest in elections, these kind of people, you know, they're not attractive to the public. Like, they're very off-putting, and they're often very disorganized and very ill-disciplined. So there's not really, like, here's the thing, I didn't view these characters as anything that posed any kind of serious political threat to society. These people are losers, right? Like I said, they're just, at the end of the day, I realise Handel's a bit more, you know, he's a bit more into his politics, and he's also that bit where he corrects Sonny, where Sonny says, I vote we get a 45 automatic and blow the head gook back to Singapore, and he goes, Saigon, stupid. Like, I get that and that's why he's the leader, he's the smartest, he's the most committed politically to this. But yeah, like, these people aren't, like, you know what I mean, they're bums, essentially. They're just thugs.
I disagree with the comparison of BAMs and Nazis. I mean, BAMs are...
I mean, well, there's racist bums.
Sure, but they're not Nazis. But anyway, I don't think we should get caught up on that point. What you were saying, Robert, about they try to portray the police in a...
There was a young team. Can I just say, near where I live, there was a young team that used to be called Nazi Circus. Just saying that.
Yeah, well, the emo boys at my bit aren't Nazis, so I don't know what you want me to say. But anyway, right, back to the point you were making, Robert. Or do you want to have this conversation, Callum?
No. I've said my piece.
Okay.
I've said quite a bit.
What you were saying about portraying the police in a negative light, I think they did try to do that, but you can't really do that when they're up against neo-Nazis, can you? I mean, they're always going to come up with...
I didn't see that
as a bit confused. But
yeah,
I didn't see that as a thing of the police. I just, like, again. By the way, can I just say that I like how that scene was filmed. Like, I know just the use of the music and the kind of POV shot from the police van riding through that warehouse. I quite like that. Like, it just all worked very well. And then there's the shooting bit, and yeah, like, just the beats of that scene were very effective.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
yeah, I thought it was good.
Oh, one thing, the final scene. So the final scene with they all go on the run. So at this point, Gabe has been ousted from the group. No, in fact, there's one thing I want to... Sorry, several things I want to mention. The character of Martin, who's Gabe's sexually abusive father. A lot of reviews I've read of this film that weren't spoiler reviews mentioned that Gabe, you know, has been sexually abused by her father. I always thought, oh, you've just revealed a massive thing. Like, you see, the first scene we see Gabe and Martin, and she doesn't call him dad, she calls him Martin. Was it obvious to you that he was her dad?
Other than the fact that he was old, no.
I thought he was just some old geezer who was, like, helping her out. The surprise for me was not the sexual assault, because that's, like, hinted at. It was the fact it was her dad.
Yeah.
I thought he was, like, some, like, foster guy or something.
Yeah, or like a worker, like a kind of a care worker or something.
Yeah.
Incredible writing, because someone like Sean Barker, I don't know if you guys watch any of his films, like The Florida Project or Tangerine, but he always talks about how there is this kind of narrative shift.
I like Tangerine.
Yeah, well, there's a narrative shift in the middle of his films where we realise nothing actually changes for the character, but we realise something about the character, which then shifts our perception of the film. So stellar.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, sorry, I said that very sillily. I've completely lost my train of thought. I was going to say some more thing about Martin and... Oh yeah, see that scene where... This is the bit where Davy and... What's his name? Gabe get close, where they're about... So they raid the house, they tie up Martin, and they're about to leave, but the skinheads decide to vandalise his Japanese car just for the hell of it. And she gets upset and Davy goes with her. And then when they have that big argument after he escapes and gets the gun, and she says, you could have just left, but you had to play silly buggers with the car. And she says, don't blame me because you fucked up. Technically, she fucked up because she's the one who smashed the cistern that he was tied to, and he was able to break his bonds against it and escape and get the gun. Although realistically, porcelain is not that sharp. It would have taken a few hours for him to get out.
Yeah, he was only tied up with like neckties and stuff. It wasn't like they knew there was a chance he could have gotten out of that. I mean,
they didn't know he had a gun. Yeah, sorry. So that's all I wanted to say on that.
Final scene.
So after Dave goes away and out of spite, she phones the police and Bubs gets killed as a result. She goes back with... Davey leaves the group as well, and she meets up with him at his granny's house, and they sleep together, and then Hando's there in the morning and explains what's happened, and they all go on the run together. That final scene, what did you make of the finale? I mean, it's a bit of a predictable finale, but...
Yeah. You kind of knew, obviously you knew Davey was going to kill Hando, but a little bit about the scene that maybe I'm just being stupid and missing a blindingly obvious point. What was the point of having
the Japanese tourists?
The Asian tourists come in.
Right, now, this is another quite controversial point in the film. So a lot of people thought, obviously the Japanese tourists came out and they start filming and taking pictures, which is a stereotype of the Japanese tourists. But, I don't want to say I've been in the company of Japanese tourists a fair few times. They are, I don't know, it's just a cultural thing, right? They're curious. They're quite, zealous with it. All tourists are, and I know that's kind of a redundant point to make in an age where everybody's got a camera phone in their back pocket.
Yeah.
But, yeah. The point of that scene I thought the point of that scene was, so there's the bit at the end where you see the two Japanese women looking down at Gabe and Davey holding each other and showing concern, which I thought the point of the show is that these characters are so horrible to Asian people, but here's two Asian people who don't even know them showing concern for them. The actual point of that scene was to make the point that their ideas of racial superiority is absolutely meaningless, because here are people who, Japan is a very rich country, it's a very prosperous culture. Here are these people who can just rock up casually as tourists and view these people behaving like wild animals. And the fact that they're looking down at them over a cliff shows that they are looking at them from a position of, it's basically trying to make the point that they are not superior to other groups of people. They can't say that because that was the point of that scene.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting.
Is that a ham-fisted way to make that point?
I quite liked it, to be honest. I've not given it that much thought to, so maybe I'm totally wrong, but first impressions, I didn't actually get that from the...
Yeah, that's not what I thought he was saying with that. I had to look this up.
First time I watched it, I was a bit worried that it was going back to what we were talking about earlier, where how we were saying, there's Vietnamese people taking over. I was worried that he was almost hinting that Hando's now off, he's gone, and he's being almost replaced by
the Asians.
And I was worried that was what he was going for, because that would have really... I thought that was bad.
Yeah.
But
those
that
people aren't immigrants, they're tourists.
Yeah.
Saima, you got anything to add to this?
Not really.
What was your initial reaction to that?
I didn't think of it that way either. I wasn't really thinking much, to be honest. I was kind of more trying to figure out, I don't know. I wasn't thinking at that point. I was just kind of like wrapped up in the kind of ending of the film. So I was like,
the drama of it all.
yeah.
Okay. I have to admit, even though obviously I don't blame Handel for wanting to strangle Gabe at that point. He burnt their method of escape, and she just admitted to the thing that got one of their friends killed. Even though Handel was a horrible person, his initial physical reaction to that, I can appreciate it from his point of view. I don't appreciate it's the wrong word, but you know what I mean. And I also thought, it was a bit contrived. Davy didn't try to explain when she said, "I heard what you said, you were going to get rid of me," and Davy didn't immediately say, no, I said to him, "No, I'm not going to get rid of you." Like,
a bit soap opera-ish.
What's that?
Yeah.
It's a bit soap opera.
Yeah, a bit.
To be fair, Davy never really seemed to stand up for himself, so that didn't bother me too much, because he didn't seem like the guy that would.
Yeah, and there's the whole dramatic irony of when Magoo sells Davy the Hitler Youth knife and Handel lends him money, and that's the thing that kills him in the end.
Good writing.
Good writing, it's writing. It serves its purpose. Like, yeah, again, I think it serves its purpose. It's the the thing that it's the thing that you act this way, it's just going to destroy you in the end. And literally an artifact from the era that they worship is the thing that kills them. Cool. So I think we've covered pretty much everything we need to. Is there any final points you want to make?
I thought the pacing was pretty good, and it might have been nice to get more more developed characters from the group, and also it might have been cool to follow the Vietnamese people more, see what they were actually like. But yeah,
I think if this film was made today, there would be more from their perspective. But I also appreciate the thing.
Yeah.
It's not about the victims; it's about the perpetrators.
I do get that. I actually think in the TV show there's a TV show of it now.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure they do focus on more sides.
Yeah. There's although he's not the most prolific director, Geoffrey Wright's actually made a Romper Stomper follow-up TV series that came out about 3 years ago, which has a few cast members from the original series. I've not watched any of it, and to be honest, from the few clips that I've seen to it, I don't really fancy it, but I'm sure it's interesting. It kind of talks more about current political events.
Yeah.
So
the main actor in that is in the movie Baby Teeth, which is a coming-of-age film. It's Australian, came out this year. It's fucking amazing.
Oh, I should say Ben Mendelsohn. You know the Australian actor Ben Mendelsohn?
Yeah.
He was actually going to play Handel, but Geoffrey Wright, who had worked with him before, thought he didn't look intimidating enough with a shaved head.
I think he could have done an alright job.
I've seen him play tough characters, but I've always seen him as more cunning than more of a brute force alpha male type, if you know what I mean. He's got that kind of face.
That's fair.
Cool. Anything you want to add? No. Okay. Right. Well, that was Sticky Floor Podcast, episode 10, double digits.
On the hoops.
Cool. It was like, Essex is a continent? You recording, you shit. you fucking started recording just as I said that. I've been to your house, Daniel. I've been to your house. So yeah, the character of Bubs.
You fuse yourself.
No, he muted me. Right, laugh it up, Robert. Okay, the character of Bubs.
I think I'm done.